It's the late 1980s and a single question hangs in the air at the Ducati headquarters. Could this company survive another decade? They've got pedigree and they've got passion, but what they don't have is any profits. Despite decades of engineering brilliance and racing glory, Ducati for some reason was dangerously close to collapse. So the machine that I'm about to introduce you to, well, it didn't just turn heads, it turned this company around, and it gave it a foundation it needed to become the brand that we know today. But to understand how we got here, we need to rewind the tape a little bit. This is Quick Shift, and this is the first episode, and in this episode we're going to take a look at how the Ducati Monster changed the game for Ducati. So grab yourself a brew, sit back, and let's get into it. So to understand how the Ducati Monster came to exist, we need to look beyond the factory floor. We need to look at the designer, who didn't just think differently, but came from a completely different world. His name was Miguel Galluzzi. He was born in 1959 in Buenos Aires, Argentina, and he grew up surrounded by motorcycles. His father raced bikes, and a young Miguel would spend his early years riding them and fixing them along with his father. His love for the machines wasn't just a hobby, it was his entire way of life. After he finished school, Miguel moved to the United States to pursue engineering and industrial design. He studied at the University of Miami, but after just 2 years, he discovered there was actually a design school in Pasadena in California, and he enrolled there instead. After graduation, he got a first job in the automotive industry, but it wasn't within motorbikes. Rather, it started out in cars. He had taken a job with the company Opel. Now, we know them as Vauxhall over here in the UK, and they make exceptionally beige cars. So I get it though, we all have to start somewhere. Eventually though, he did move on and take a job with Honda, before finally landing a position at Cagiva. Now, you may recognise Cagiva. It's not to be mistaken with Ducati, because Cagiva had recently acquired Ducati, and little did anyone know that Miguel would eventually design a bike that not only saved Ducati from collapse, but created a whole new segment of motorcycles. He joined the design team, working on various brands and marks under the Cagiva branding, and eventually worked on things from off-road bikes and high-performance machines. But even amongst that talented group of people he worked with, Miguel stood out. He had a reputation for challenging the norms, pushing for designs that were rider-focused, not just engineering showpieces. So then we fast forward then to the late 80s, early 90s, and Miguel watched Ducati pour resources into exotic race bikes and technical innovations. But something kept gnawing at him. He saw a gap, an opportunity that Ducati just wasn't exploring. Riders, especially in urban Europe, were looking for bikes that were simpler, lighter, more usable day to day. He envisaged a bike that threw off all that excess, a motorcycle that stripped away the racing pedigree, but kept the soul of Ducati intact. One that was affordable and accessible, and above all, just bloody good fun to ride. So during his holidays in 1991, he set about creating this bike, all in secret. It started with a frame of a Ducati 851, fitted with a 900cc engine. The basis of his prototype that was a complete part spin special with a purpose. It needed to be raw, it needed to be minimal, and it needed to be deliberate in its simplicity. Miguel was quoted as saying, "All you need for a bike is a saddle, a tank, engine, 2 wheels and some handlebars." This prototype that Miguel apparently still owns to this day, by the way, was no longer just a radical idea on paper. It lived. But still, not everyone at Ducati was convinced that it belonged. There was one moment, one meeting behind closed doors that could have ended the monster before it even started. But we'll come back to that. First, we need to understand how this one model inspired an entire category and changed motorcycling culture forever. Whilst I've already made the claim that the Ducati Monster saved the company, this story is bigger than that. The Monster nameplate actually sparked an entire movement. A movement that has led to the modern naked bike segment, that's now a staple in every manufacturer's catalogue. Suzuki SV650, Triumph Street Triple, the whole range of Yamaha MT bikes, the 09, the 07, the 03, the MT10, and a whole plethora of naked bikes, all influenced by the Monster. Over 3 decades, Ducati kept evolving the Monster, from carburetted air-cooled twins to liquid-cooled 1200cc beasts. But the ethos has never changed. It's minimal, muscular, and unmistakably Ducati. It inspired competitors and it gave Ducati a new identity. And it brought in a generation of riders who otherwise might have never swung their leg over a Ducati. Okay, now back to that moment I mentioned before the Monster actually even made it to production. Several executives reportedly pushed back on the idea. They wanted to focus on sports bikes, on the racing. They didn't see a stripped-down part spin bike as worthy of the Ducati name. It undermined everything Ducati stood for. But Miguel and a small group of advocates, they pushed harder. In the end, it came down to a single decision from the then Cagiva head, Claudio, who greenlit the project. Just one model, he said, limited to 1,000 units. Let's see if it sells. It sold all right. It sold in its thousands. This bike defined a new chapter for Ducati, and it kept the brand alive long enough to become the icon that it is today. So now it's 1992 and Ducati has unveiled the Monster M900 at the Cologne Motor Show. It was unlike anything Ducati had ever released, or any major brand for that matter. Naked frame, no fairings, bold proportions, and a name that didn't just evoke racing speed, it was all about raw identity, the Monster. As I mentioned, internally, some at Ducati still weren't convinced the Monster was the right move. They thought it was a risk. But fortunately, the market thought otherwise. In its first year, it sold beyond expectations. It drew in new riders, urban commuters, and the style-conscious motorcyclists alike. And by 2000, the Monster made up over 50% of Ducati's global sales. It wasn't just a hit, it was an absolute phenomenon. The Monster gave Ducati something that it hadn't had in decades: stability. It had financial breathing room, allowing them to redefine their superbike line, invest in research and development, and expand globally. It's no stretch to say that the Monster saved Ducati. Sometimes the machine that defines a company isn't the most powerful, or the most expensive, or even the most advanced. It's the one that arrives at the right moment, with the right idea and the right people behind it. This was the story of Miguel Galluzzi and the Ducati Monster. If you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you get notifications every time we upload, and please go over and follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. In the end, it came down to a single decision from the then Cagiva head, Claudio Castiglione. A single decision from the then Cagiva head, Claudio,